with you about language interpretation. So this meeting is being interpreted in Spanish, and for interpretation, you'll please connect using a tablet or a computer. There is a globe icon which will appear momentarily on the bottom right of your screen. And you do need to select the language of your preference. And that's a really important point to make because there will be Spanish speakers in the meeting, and for them to have their questions asked in Spanish and interpreted for us in English, for you to hear the question and answer in English, you will need to select the language of your preference. Go ahead, Francisco.
Buenas noches a todos. Queremos señalarles cómo se va a llevar a cabo la interpretación esta noche. Es necesario, para poder tener acceso al canal de interpretación, es necesario que se conecte usando una tableta o computadora. Usando su teléfono no tendrán acceso al canal. Y pulse el icono del globo en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla. Seleccione el lenguaje de su preferencia, en este caso español. Y es importante que hagan esa selección porque habrá personas que tomarán la palabra en inglés y habrá personas que tomarán la palabra en español. Y iremos cambiando de un idioma al otro conforme sea necesario.
Thank you, Francisco. So the globe will appear momentarily. A great question. I understand we weren't seeing it yet. So again, there's the globe. So please select the language of your choice. And one friendly reminder as we are sharing and hearing your input this evening, because the meeting is being interpreted, if you do speak during the meeting, if you could please speak slowly so that the interpreters have enough time to translate into Spanish for our Spanish-speaking community members. Next slide. So I want to make some brief introductions of who you'll be hearing from primarily this evening, a few people. Our facilitator this evening is Catherine Archuleta. Again, Anthony Aragon with the Office of Community and Business Engagement. You're going to hear from Riley Lamy, who's a senior city planner with Dottie. And then a couple of individuals who are assisting in these planning and design efforts is Charlie Alexander with Fair and Peers and Nora Newrider with NHN Consulting. Next slide. And now I'm going to turn it over to our amazing facilitator, Catherine Archuleta.
Thank you, Anthony. Welcome, everybody. This is our third meeting of the KEG, and good to see. Sometimes there's background noise in each of our homes in the group. But if you have a question and you don't want to forget it and you really want to be sure that it's addressed during the Q&A, or if you want just an immediate answer, please use the chat window, and you can see that at the bottom of your screen. There's a chat icon there. It has a number 2 on it right now. That is where, if in between presentations, if you would like to ask a question, please use that chat button. And we have a number of pauses where we will unmute everybody and invite all of our participants to participate in Q&A. So thank you. So we have a full agenda for tonight. We're going to talk about the Sidewalk program update, the Lincoln Street Neighborhood Bikeway, East 51st Bike Lane, and the East 45th Bike Improvements. And I'll turn it over to Riley.
All right, thanks so much, Catherine. So again, my name is Riley Lamy. I'm with Dottie, and just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy evening to join us and learn more about these projects. We understand that sidewalks continue to be a top priority for the residents of Globeville and for the neighborhood as a whole. And so before we get into some of the bike projects that we're going to be talking about tonight, we wanted to provide an update on where we're at with the Sidewalk program. As some of you know, there's $17 million that has been allocated in the Elevate Denver Bond program. That is for pedestrian connectivity improvements, which means it gives us the ability to build and construct new sidewalks in the Globeville neighborhood. The first set of projects is currently in design, and we anticipate that the construction of those projects will start next year and then continue on for the next several years in different areas throughout the neighborhood. Those projects take a little bit of time to get designed, and then the construction takes a little bit of time as well. So now that those first projects are being constructed, we'll start to see more and more being built in the neighborhood. The project teams for those sidewalk projects will be connecting with the communities, both on the design of the projects that are already in design, but also on helping to identify where future sidewalks will go in the Globeville neighborhood as well. What I'm showing on my screen, and if you're joining us by phone, I do have an image up on my screen that's just a map that's showing where those different sidewalk projects are currently, that are currently in design for the neighborhood. So you can see there's quite a few projects that are in design. This is certainly not all of the projects that will be constructed in the future, but these are the ones that are in design right now. And then these projects will be constructed, as I mentioned previously, starting this year and then over the next several years. There will also be additional sidewalk projects that will be identified, designed, and then constructed through a separate community process that will identify where those future sidewalk improvements will happen. So we're going to pause there, and my colleague who is on the call with us, Karen Good, knows a little bit more information than I do about the sidewalk program. And so if there's any questions about that program, I'm going to turn the floor to her and allow her to answer.
Thanks much, Riley. I am looking at the chat and trying to look at 10 things at once.
So we can maybe take off the mute button for a minute here too, in case people want to just ask you a question. Would that be okay, Karen?
Absolutely.
Then we don't have to worry about watching the chat. We could, if there are any questions about the sidewalk program, could you let us know? There's also, if it's easier for you to jump and you want to ask a question, there is on the reaction button at the bottom of your screen, a smiley face with a plus, and there is a icon once you press that button, a raise hand, if you'd like to do it that way, or else you can just speak up. So
and Katie has a great question. I was just going to ask Riley, could you go back to that map of the projects? I think that'll be helpful for folks with their to ask their questions. Thank you.
I have a question. What are all those numbers in blue? What do they mean?
Those are just different segment numbers that, so for instance, sorry, I'm zooming in a little bit. Love seeing your faces, but I'm gonna make your faces much smaller so I can see the numbers better. For instance, number 9 is a project along 44th by Fairview Elementary. Number 10 is the Broadway turn there. So they're all just different projects. Some of them are very short segments of like a block or two. These are gaps. So for instance, 2 is on 44th between Delaware, 15 is on 43rd, et cetera. That's all. Those are just different tiny little segments.
Okay. And now the portion, it says that they're going to start next year. However, what the information that's been told before is 51st is going to be like one of the first sidewalk segments. Is that true? And when is that true? That part, that it's the first that's going to be done?
We've got a lot of moving parts. All of these are in the first round and will be starting in the next year. But we don't have, say an exact date of on July 15th, X will start. We're still working through that. And as we know more information on when 51st will start up, we'll reach out with more exact information.
So next year means 2022? Or do you mean this year, 2021?
So by and large, they'll be starting within the next year. Some are next year, some are still in 2021. And as I said, as we have more exact information, we will come out with that. But a lot of them will actually go into construction in 2022. But as we have more information, we'll get that to you. If we had that now, we'd have a schedule slide here with, project 23 from 51st from here to here, anticipated start time. We're not there quite yet.
Okay, and are these all the sidewalks then that will be done in Globeville with the bond money, knowing that some of that bond money is supposed to go to Elyria Swansea also?
Not at all. If you see on the slide, additional projects will be identified and designed. And this is a clip of a much larger map that has additional projects that's focused. This is a clip that shows the Washington area and focuses in here. We do have additional segments along 52nd between, well, I could tell you so many other tiny little segments, but this is part of a much larger map that includes Elyria and Swansea, not just the Globeville area. And across board, we'll be doing a more focused outreach in these areas, and there are opportunities to identify additional sidewalk segments.
Okay, I think, and other people in the community may want to speak up about this. At the last meeting, what we asked for is the comprehensive overview. So I think, it would be great. We've got that bond money to show the community, this is all that's going to be, the comprehensive view of these are the sidewalks that are going to get done. And also to be responsive to the community with, with some project timelines. So, I'm speaking as, a business person, and of course, these sidewalks really need to be put in the residential areas.
That's great feedback, Nancy, and that's something that we are working on, and will be continuing to communicate about. We are hoping to get something in the council newsletter in the next couple weeks that will be that larger that larger map that shows a bit more, and we're still working on those details such as timelines and what have you. This is part of a continuing conversation, and really do appreciate your feedback because those are great.
Yeah, great, because it is really critical, because we, of course, keep hearing about the sidewalks, and if people start seeing construction related for 4 years, okay now, but we see improvements being related to the National Western Center and not flowing into the neighborhoods, that is very problematic.
Absolutely agree. And this is all this, it's something that's really challenging. We wish that, you could identify a sidewalk and go in the next week and just pour a sidewalk and curb and gutter and drainage and just boom, done. Unfortunately, this is something I say a lot. If the sidewalks were easy in these areas, we might not have these gaps. As we dive into these, there are a lot of details that need to be worked through, and it's not as easy as we'd like to put sidewalks in, but we need to do it appropriately so that we're coordinating with the property owners and making sure that people have access, and that we're not putting a sidewalk in and suddenly say like flooding somebody's yard when it rains. Like that's not helping folks. So we have to take time to do it right and make sure we're communicating with people, and we're working on that. And we'll be continuing to go out and go out to the community with more information as we have it.
I'd like to open it up to some, Nancy, would that be all right if we opened it up?
Yes, I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Those are great questions. Are there any?
Karen, hi.
Hi.
It's been a long time. Your third bullet talks about additional sidewalks and a separate process. Will the neighborhood have an opportunity to identify sidewalks that they would like to see done through this process?
Absolutely. And that's something I was alluding to a little bit before. We're hoping to get some information in the council newsletter and have some interactive opportunities for people to say, hey, great that you're doing these sidewalks, but you are missing this one, this one, this one. And those are really critical to get to the rec center, to get to my child to school, to get to my bus stop. So that's something that we're working on. That we want to make sure that that outreach is something that is accessible to everyone. And that's something that we would certainly reach out to the folks in this group to say, okay, we have this information now, please push this to your networks. Please, please make sure everyone that you're in touch with has the ability to access this information. So absolutely.
Katie?
Hey, thanks. Before the pandemic, I walked to the light rail a lot from my house. So I'm really excited to see, I think in the number 2 area, and am kind of squinting to see the map, but does that kind of complete the whole connection between, where Garden Place Elementary is and up to the light rail?
Yeah, that's the idea. So there are a lot of missing gaps, as you can see, number 9, there's a lot missing there. And then the goat trail going up to that 44th bridge, that will be formalized. So it will no longer, having to crawl under the fence and up to the sidewalk. And we're working on making sure that that is not just stair and landings, but also a means for you to walk a bike up that with the runnels or something that accommodates bikes, as well as a loop around for those that want to go around and up. If somebody's looking for extra steps or something for their day, for their health app. So yes, that along with work on the other side of the bridge, number 2, and then it gives you some opportunities whether you want to continue on 44th or bop over to 43rd. So we're working on that, and so we'll
yeah, so exciting. Thank you. Yeah.
Let's take one last question on sidewalks and we'll move on. Are there any other questions about the sidewalks?
I have a question.
Thanks,
Yeah, to me, so I'm thinking about the last meeting. I think it was the 51st feasibility.
Mhm.
And, we were chatting, and I honestly believe the best way for any of you who are making these decisions for our neighborhood is to come down and take a walking tour with us and see what it's really like to try to get to even to the light rail or to the rail, the G line. So my grandson and I took a walk we took the G line down to downtown on Saturday, and we had to cross so many streets just to try to be on a sidewalk. And until you really come here and cross these streets, we have no lines on our crosswalks. We have no slow down signs, no kids crossing. We have none of that here in Globeville. So I would love to invite you, Karen, and anyone else on this call to come down and let's just take a walk. And so you can really see how difficult it is to get around here. That's my first comment. And then just one more, I'm so sorry. You also said that you gave us the option on that last phone call to say, hey, if we don't want any sidewalks along 51st right now, then we can focus on what we need in Globeville. How true is that statement?
It's totally true. And it was, just to be clear for everyone, it was the 52nd feasibility study. And that is off the map here, but it's true. The thing is that we do have a lot of funds, and we don't. We have the ability to put a heck of a lot of sidewalks in. So we're not in a place where we have to exclude an area from sidewalks in order to get sidewalks someplace else. There really are. There's really a pretty significant opportunity to add sidewalks. As you can see from this map, we're doing a lot of investment in sidewalks in the area, and some of the areas that might not have sidewalks, maybe because there are other folks that are building sidewalks. And Gail, we can talk a little bit more offline about a tour of the area. We have done walking tours in the neighborhood and are pretty familiar with the missing sidewalk areas, but we can chat offline about that, because Catherine, I think we need to
move on. All really great questions, and I know that we'll continue to update you within the CAG meetings and also with Karen. I'm going to encourage us to move on to the next portion of our meeting, but if you do have other questions, please use the chat function to help us make sure that we catch your questions and that we can get back to you. So Riley, back to you.
Thanks, Catherine. So now we're going to talk about 3 different opportunities to make it easier to travel by bicycle in the Globeville neighborhood. And so I'm going to talk about those next. But first, I want to go back a little bit and talk about the Globeville neighborhood plan. And this plan, when it was done, that I know a lot of you are familiar with, there was a section in it that talked about how we can improve connectivity. So in other words, making the streets more connected and making them safer. And there was a lot of different recommendations that were related to transit. Then there was recommendations related to improving sidewalks and making it easier to get across the street. And then there was also some recommendations that were related to adding bikeways. So the bikeways that I'm going to talk about are bikeways that were identified from the Globeville neighborhood plan. And so I just wanted to provide that context. So in particular, there's 3 projects that we're going to talk about. We'll start with the North Lincoln Street Neighborhood Bikeway, and then we'll talk about East 51st, and then finally we'll wrap up with East 45th. Before we get to the Neighborhood Bikeway, I wanted to say that all 3 of these projects are in the very beginning stages of planning. And so what we're looking for from you is input on those projects. And we want to hear things like where can we make it easier to cross the street? Where is it hard to see getting across the street? And how can we improve the street to make it more comfortable? Those are the kinds of questions that we're going to be asking. And a little bit later on, we're going to be talking about a survey, and that's where we'll be collecting a lot of that information. And that survey is what will help us to inform what the designs look like for these particular projects. So for Lincoln Street, that's the first one that we're going to start off with. And I'm going to actually hand that off to Charlie, who's going to explain a little bit more about this particular project.
Great, thank you, Riley. Just to be clear for everyone, we will start, so we've got 3 different projects that we're going to talk about. We're going to stop after every single one to have Q&A. So that way it makes it a little easier for everyone to follow. So as Riley mentioned, the first project that I will describe is the Lincoln Street Neighborhood Bikeway. The limits of this are, Riley's pointing them out, from 51st Avenue on the north to 44th Avenue on the south. As Riley mentioned, this is a project that has been talked about for a long time, including in the Globeville neighborhood plan, as well as the citywide plans for bicycling, which is called Denver Moves Bicycles. And this project in particular has funding to be implemented via the bond. So the map on the right, for those of you on the phone, just showing the project limits and the ways that it connects to other aspects of the transportation system. And I'll go through a couple slides here on neighborhood bikeways and what they are and what they might look like, and then get into some of the opportunity for feedback. So a neighborhood bikeway is really a street where it has low traffic volume, there's not many cars on it, and where we try to really decrease the speed that people drive at to make it a better environment for all people using the street. So that does include people biking, but it also includes people walking, people that are trying to get to transit. And we often hear that, you know, for people driving, they sometimes appreciate the slower speeds too, especially if they're trying to turn on or off the street. Some of the things that we try to do involve improving visibility for everyone so that everyone can see each other better. I mentioned treatments to discourage speeding. In some cases, we might consider treatments that would lower the amount of traffic actually on the street. In the case of Lincoln, it has transit operating on it, and the volumes are already quite low, so I'm not sure that will be necessary. But by keeping the speed low, keeping the volume low, we're able to make it a comfortable street while maintaining parking on the corridor, and overall, you know, improving and emphasizing safety for all users. Just to see a few pictures of what some of the treatments could look like and some examples. Wayfinding signage so that people know how to navigate the street and connect to other facilities that are emphasized for walking and biking. Some of that is also done with pavement markings. At intersections, we may explore treatments like curb extensions to shorten the distance that people need to cross the street, or different traffic calming devices. So these are words we use in the industry of different tools we use to reduce travel speeds on streets. And then different ways of really making sure that we're serving local traffic, such as the one on the picture on the bottom right, about making crossings safer for people on the street. See some questions here, and I will open it to Catherine to help me answer those once you get to the end here. So actually, Riley, can you back? Yeah, thank you. So we've done a little bit of data collection here just to inform our conversation with you all. So we've studied the crash history on the corridor. There have been some crashes that have involved people walking. There have been some crashes that have resulted in serious injuries. Some of the speeds on the corridor by people driving are fairly high, such as, I'll show exactly where we collected that data, but in excess of 30 miles an hour in some locations. And looking at different feedback that the city's gotten over time, a lot of the public feedback is related to maintenance of the corridor and locations that needed to get maintenance attention of some form. So to go through just some of the data that we've mapped here, this is a map that shows the Lincoln Street corridor highlighted in yellow, and the locations where crashes have happened, as well as the number of crashes that have happened at those locations. So the bigger the circle, the more crashes. And we've identified the locations where those crashes resulted in a serious injury or where they involved a person walking. For those of you on the phone, the locations with serious injuries were Lincoln Street at 44th and 48th and 51st. And then the pedestrian crashes occurred at 48th Avenue and at 51st Avenue. Otherwise, there's sort of a denser cluster of crashes, sort of on the intersections either side of I-70 at 45th Avenue or at 47th Avenue. I mentioned previously that we collected a little bit of data to understand the volume of traffic, so the number of cars on the corridor. And generally, the number of cars ranges from around 800 to around 1,300 vehicles per day. ADT that you see here, just average daily traffic. So that basically means, between 800 and 1,300 cars from, midnight on day one to midnight on day two. And the speeds generally in the 25 to 32 mile an hour range. We found them to be a little bit higher north of I-70. And that sort of speed is probably higher than most people are comfortable with on the corridor, especially if you're walking or traveling by bike. So timeline wise, this is the very beginning of us looking into this project and identifying kind of the future path for it. So we don't know what this is going to look like yet. We don't know all of the problems that we need to solve yet. We're really here this evening to introduce the project to you all and to take the opportunity to listen to problems that you know exist on the street. Because neighborhood bikeway projects are intended to improve conditions for all users of the street, people walking, people biking, people driving, people getting to transit. We're really interested to hear all of the issues that you know exist on Lincoln Street so that we can find ways of exploring whether or not, or exploring how to resolve those problems. And we don't expect to have a final design before the summer or fall of this year. And we'll be back with this group based on what we heard tonight and how we're able to incorporate that feedback into a design periodically throughout the year before we get to a design for the corridor. So I've got just a couple more slides here. So we're really hoping to hear input from you all on ways that we can improve the street and specific problems that you're experiencing on the street. The two ways of doing that are via our Q&A tonight. And then on the next slide, Riley, we have a survey for all of the projects that we're talking about tonight. The links are shown on the slides here. And I believe they're being entered into the chat right now so that you can click on them if you want to. It'll be open for the next few weeks here. And the links, I'll do the English version and Francisco can do the Spanish version. It's bit.ly/GES Bikeways. All of the feedback we get tonight and all the feedback we get on the survey, we will be using as we move forward. So that's everything I had to introduce the project to you all, and I'll hand it over to Catherine to facilitate our Q&A. Oh, Catherine, you're on mute.
Yeah, no, I have it.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this is on the Lincoln Street project. So the questions that, Liz, I don't know if maybe you want to go through those questions again. They're in the chat, but Liz, if you could just remember or remind everybody, remember me, if you could remind everybody what those questions are and the feedback that we're asking about the Lincoln Street section.
Sure. So I think the question really was about how, what sort of input the Dottie team is looking to receive. Riley had mentioned some questions. And it's the answer to that are, we really want to know where it's hard for you to cross, where you see opportunities to have the sidewalk network improve. And then also any safety issues.
Thank you for being mentioned.
So can I remind everybody to mute if you're not speaking, because we're getting some background noise.
So yeah, and anywhere that you are experiencing crossing difficulties or have a hard time being seen by cars, really in any input that you see in terms of safety or improvements, we really want to know about.
So LJ?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for doing this project. I live right at the intersection of 47th and Lincoln Street, and all of the problems that you identified, I very personally associate with, and I'm really grateful to hear that the city has a dedicated project to try to slow down traffic and improve the safety. Those are all things that'll bring great benefits to the neighborhood. One thing I did want to address, or maybe just the two things. So here on Lincoln Street at 47th, we see quite a bit of industrial traffic. So this would be, heavy vehicles that I think are going between warehouses or coming up from the Burlington Northern Yard at 44th Street heading north. And really that traffic should be on Washington Street. And I'm hoping quite a bit of the improvements that you're talking about would discourage those heavier vehicles from using these residential streets to go north and south. The other thing that I wanted to point out is quite a bit of the speeding traffic we see here is heading east and westbound on 47th Street. So I know the focus is really on the Lincoln Street traffic, but I'm hoping you can do something at that four-way stop to discourage people in all directions of the intersection from speeding and from blowing through the stop signs. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, LJ, for those comments. Yeah, I think I've understood them. I'm not sure I have an answer for them, but those are things that we can definitely investigate as a part of this process. And that's exactly the sort of feedback that we're looking for now, so that we can see if we can come up with solutions to some of those issues.
We have a question from Vernon about whether a traffic study was done for Lincoln Street, and if so, when it was done.
So I don't know if there's a previous traffic study that has been done on Lincoln Street, but we will be doing things akin to a traffic study as a part of this project, understanding, some of the volume data that we've already collected, some of the speed data that would commonly be in a traffic study. Any changes that we propose for the corridor, we will be studying those to understand the effects of those changes on traffic and be reporting those out to you all as we navigate the process over the next several months.
Are there other questions about the Lincoln Street section?
Catherine, there's one additional question put in the chat just before Vernon, if I can tackle it.
Okay, sure, please.
Sure, yep. So the question asks how bike lanes along Lincoln Street will impact parking for homeowners and renters, and that's an issue and a concern that has come up in the past. And I believe the abbreviation there is including during the Washington Street study. And what are we going to do about parking on the corridor to not impact residents and tenants? So the neighborhood bikeway, Riley, if you can maybe go back one more. Yeah, this is a good example, or maybe go down one more, Riley, if you could, please. So this picture on the bottom left is a good example. So the neighborhood bikeway identified for the street is different from a bike lane. There's not going to be a delineated or dedicated space for people biking. They will share the travel lane with people driving, and provided that we can get the driving speeds sufficiently low. What that means is that there's not expected to be a significant change in the parking on Lincoln Street. So we expect that parking will still be on both sides. Sometimes through these processes, we do hear from people that they have a hard time or feel unsafe crossing the street or turning onto or off of the street because they can't see. And sometimes parked cars are what prevents them from seeing. So sometimes near intersections, we may look at prohibiting parking close to the intersection, but that would be a space here and there, not like a wholesale removal of parking by any means. And those are the sorts of details that we will bring back to this group once we know more about the project later this year.
Katie?
Hey there, thanks. I want to echo what LJ was saying about the intersection of 47th and Lincoln. I agree that that's a problematic area. And then the other area that I want to highlight that could really use some solutions is the section of Lincoln that goes underneath I-70, including both of the frontage roads on the sides. And so similar to that 47th challenge, I know this problem is focused, or this project is focused on Lincoln. A lot of being safe on Lincoln has to do with how cars come in and out of that frontage road and how fast they're going and what they can see, and also what I can see as I walk my dog and ride a bike under here most frequently. So that's my biggest experience. But have also driven a car under there too. And it's hard to see where everyone is.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Katie. One last question, and then just to remind you that there is a survey that, and we're going to put that link in the chat as well. So there's an opportunity not only tonight, but also in completing the survey. It's open till March the 12th. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. And so Riley, do you want to move on?
That sounds good. Thanks again, Catherine. So the next project that I'm going to talk about is on East 51st. And this project is looks a little bit different than the neighborhood bikeway that we talked about before. So this project again is on East 51st between North Broadway and North Washington Street. And the reason why we're looking at a project here is because the street is scheduled to be repaved in 2021, so later this summer. And East 51st was recommended as a bike lane, both in the Globeville neighborhood plan and also in the Denver Moves bicycles plan. And so because the street is being repaved, that means that they're going to put down fresh pavement and then have to restripe and paint all of the lane markings that are present on the street. That's an opportunity for us to install the bikeway. And so some of the benefits of having a bikeway on the street are that it connects a lot of the different destinations that are on either end of the street, whether that be the North Lincoln Street neighborhood bikeway or the 5090 Broadway Recreation Center. Those are destinations that this project could connect. And it will connect into the improvements that are currently in the planning process on 51st that are east of Washington. And so that's another potential benefit, and it's helping to, again, increase overall connectivity in the neighborhood and make it easier to get around. The image that's on the bottom of my screen is a picture of what a striped bike lane looks like. So you've probably seen these around different places in Denver. And so again, when we go to repave the street, it's an opportunity to paint a bike lane that looks similar to that. So this is just the speed or some of the information before Dottie designs or starts the planning process for any project. We typically collect a lot of data just to help inform what some of the inform what the existing conditions look like. But again, as you are the community that lives here and knows these streets best, the most important piece of data that we can collect is really your input. And that is what's most important. So we look at things like crashes, we look at things like speeds, and then we look at what parking looks like and to see whether or not how it's being utilized. So we look at all of those different factors as we're thinking about the design of the project. So similar to this project, again, is in the very early stages. So what we're going to be asking for is on that same survey, there's also questions about East 51st. So that the input that you give will help inform what the design of that project looks like as well. And then we'll be coming back to you in April with a design that we can share, and we'll be able to get your feedback on the design of that project at that time. The goal for this project is to coordinate it with the paving season. And so typically paving in Denver starts in the early spring and then it ends in the fall, depending on how the weather is. And so it's anticipated that that the street would be repaved during the summer, and then that the project would get installed during that time. So again, for this particular project, we have a survey that is asking questions that are related to 51st. So it's the same exact survey as the Lincoln Street Neighborhood Bikeway project. And again, that is bit.ly/GES Bikeways. And we'll be using that to gather your input about what's working on the corridor, what's not working, where you have concerns with speeding vehicles, where you might have concerns with crossing the street, both as a pedestrian or riding a bike. And something else that I just want to reiterate is that a lot of these projects, although we're designing bikeway improvements, we also, based on the feedback that we hear from the community, oftentimes are able to add in improvements that benefit all travel modes into the design. So with that, I'm going to pause there and see if there's any questions on this project.
Katie, do you still have your hand raised? Or is that from the last time?
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to lower it.
Okay. Anybody else have questions about the East 51st section? We've just put the links in the chat, so that will be there again, reminding you that those links will allow you to maybe think a little bit more about this section and the Lincoln Street, and then third one that we'll be describing soon. Just to be, if you have additional comments, don't feel like you have to be rushed to do it tonight. That you can tonight provide comments as well as offer them during in the survey as you've had time to think a little bit more about it. And there is that other section of the survey that allows you to add in different comments, not just about the ones that we've asked specifically about. Any other comments, questions? Riley?
I have a quick, oh, sorry, Riley.
Go ahead, Gail. Go ahead. Sure.
Just a real quick question. Can we get this survey out to all of the residents along these paths, or even to the residents of Globeville? Is that possible?
Certainly, yeah, we can try our best to get that out to along the corridors. I might defer to Beth or Karen about the best way to do that, but that's something that we can look into.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Gail, we would love to do that. One of the things that we've been doing to get the word out on, oh, I'm so sorry. I had to start my video too, not just unmute myself. One of the things that we have been doing is coordinating with council office. So we certainly would do that. And we would really appreciate you all pushing these out, getting them, we'll get them to stakeholder lists that we have, and hope that folks can help push that out as well. So absolutely. And we really would appreciate your support in that as well.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Great question. Any other questions or comments? Okay, Riley, we can move on to the next section.
All right. So the last project that I'm going to talk about, it says on my screen East 44th, East 45th, and East 46th. And that's because we don't actually know of what street there would be improvements on. And that's something that we want your feedback on. So East 45th, between basically the South Platte River Trail, all the way to where the East 44th overpass is, it has an existing bike lane that is currently, and that's shown in the Globeville neighborhood and as well. And it has an existing bike lane that's shared between parked cars and the street. And so what we're trying to ask right now is how can we improve that street, or how can we improve a bike connection and make it so that it's a little bit more comfortable? We understand that the street has changed and that there's a lot of vehicles that travel on the street, and that if you're riding a bike, it might not be the most comfortable thing to share a street where right next to parked cars, right next to a really busy roadway. And so what we're trying to understand is how could we improve that street, or how could we improve a different street in the area that would make it so that it's feels more comfortable to ride a bike. And so what we're trying to do is figure out how we can connect to different destinations, including the rest of the neighborhood on the other side, of the interstate highway, and how can we connect that to the South Platte River Trail, knowing that that's an important asset to the community as well. So what we've done, just similar to before, is we've looked at how 45th works today. So we've looked at how many crashes there are. We've looked at how fast vehicles travel on the street. And we've kind of, again, collected a lot of information just so that way we have an understanding of how the street is working. And this particular project, the reason why it's so short is, again, because we don't know where the future improvements will be at. What we're looking for in the survey is for people to be able to tell us where they'd like to ride or where they'd like to see bicycle improvements in the future. So in this particular section of the survey, those are exactly the kinds of questions that it asks, is kind of saying, would you rather see improvements on 45th, on 44th, or on 46th? So what we'll be able to do with that is take all of that feedback, and then we'll report back next time we meet, which is in April, where we'll be giving an update both on the Lincoln Street neighborhood bikeway. We'll be sharing what the designs look like for East 51st. And then we'll also be kind of sharing the results of the feedback that you've given tonight and on the survey about which street might be a preferred option to make it more comfortable to travel by bike in the future. So with that, I'm going to pause there in case there's any questions.
So this is sort of option 1, option 2, or option 3. So we'd love to have your feedback on those, and also, you know, either tonight or through the survey. And Gail, to your question, this is really a great opportunity to get a lot more feedback if we can use your connections or to help us get out into the community, especially as we sort of have, this one seems to offer a lot of opportunity for input in terms of sort of which street would be more amenable to the community at large, and to our bicycle riders. So any questions, Katie?
Hi, thanks. I really appreciate this conversation, because I think while right now the bike lane is on 45th, it doesn't always work all that great. But from my perspective, I use the South Platte Trail really frequently. And I think that the bike and pedestrian thoroughfare should stay on 45th, that main street, for a variety of reasons. One, it is a main street corridor. There are storefront businesses there that I think benefit from having the slower traffic. I would like to ride by those kinds of things, and it feels more lively than 44th. You're kind of right up against the train tracks, and there's a lot of BNSF trucks that go up and down that road, and they go pretty fast. I know some changes are planned for sidewalks there that might change that, but personally, I feel less comfortable with the traffic from the train yard than what happens on 45th. And then 46th can be really icy and gets really dirty because of the highway. And so, and also can feel a little bit less safe because like riding or walking at night, there just aren't as many eyes over there, and feels not as much a like part of the neighborhood. But in order to make 45th safe and usable, I think other traffic needs to be, that's more appropriate for where there's less, you know, street level activity needs to be moved or rerouted, particularly big trucks. And then just, I like your term traffic calming, whatever can be done to kind of slow that down to a neighborhood speed.
Riley, will you show us the cross section? Matthew would like to see the cross section again. And then we have a question on small business and rec centers as destinations. The 45th Avenue is a main street traditionally, and the Panaderia, Emmanuel, and the Global Rec Center, a couple of churches, etc. Is that, Matthew, is that the cross section you wanted?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Do you have any questions about that, Matthew? Or comments?
Hey, Catherine, I wanted to
Hi, Dorothy.
Hey. So hi, I'm Dorothy Leyva. I am the Tiny Home Village Manager for Colorado Village Collaborative. I kind of wanted to give a little bit more input. So our lease is up in May of 2022, but one of the things that we've noticed in the area, especially along that 45th Avenue, is again, I like that whole term of the calming area because there is not a lot of traffic there. A lot of cars do speed and turn that corner extremely fast. We've actually had a really bad accident where a car turned the corner from 45th onto Pearl Street and crashed into the fence on the east side of Pearl. And you know, we don't know what's going to be there after the village leaves in May of 2022, but there is, you know, there's residential areas there too. So it's a big concern that cars are speeding around that corner because there's no sidewalks. It's just kind of an empty lot that's kind of back there. So that's a concern that we definitely want to bring up as well to the attention of the city.
Thank you, Dorothy. Other questions or comments on 45th, 44th, 45th, 46th? Okay, well, think a little bit. This would be really terrific if we could get a lot of input on this particular bikeway. Again, we'll show there is the link to the survey. You have again till March 12th to respond. If not for yourself, please share this link with your neighbors or your fellow bike riders or residents. As much input as we could get on this would be very, very helpful.
Riley, I do have a question for you about the choice to have a 10-foot shared bike and parking lane. Is there a particular trigger, like a warrant of the number of, like the percentage of parking utilization, like a maximum percentage that would be appropriate for this type of an arrangement, given that, you know, if the street was entirely parked up, then that's a lot of risk for being doored by a car opening their door.
Yeah, that's a great question. So typically in the city, we're not doing these types of improvements where it's a shared parking lane and bike lane or anymore. And so especially when we look at streets like this that have a lot of traffic, and I think when we analyzed it, there's quite a bit of traffic that occurs on the street every day. And so we realize that it's not an ideal condition. So those are things that we will research. We do have kind of general warrants about what type of bikeway would go in based on based on how many cars are parked, based on how busy the street is, where we've seen crashes, what the speeds look like, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the information that we use to make a decision about what the design looks like. Where we're really at now, though, is just kind of trying to determine, is this the best street to have a bike on, or are there other places that might feel more comfortable?
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay. Riley, back to you.
All right. So those are all three projects that we wanted to talk to you about tonight. So just in terms of next steps, again, encourage you to take the survey that I just mentioned, that is bit.ly/GES Bikeways. And then we will be taking all of the feedback that we heard from the survey, and we'll be kind of taking that back, and that will be what we consider as we start to work on the next phase of the project, which is actually designing it. So designing what happens on 51st and designing what happens on the Lincoln Street Neighborhood Bikeway. So we will be coming back to the community in April. That date is still to be determined, but we will be having a follow-up meeting to be able to share what we heard from the survey and then how we've incorporated that feedback into the designs. If there's questions or if you weren't able to access the survey online, you can email Anthony Aragon at denvergov.org. He will be able to help you access the survey online. And if you have any general questions, you can also email bikes@denvergov.org for more information. And it's helpful if you put the subject or the street that you're interested in the subject line. That way, the person that monitors that email inbox knows the appropriate staff member at the city to be able to direct that email to.
For those of you on the phone, it's anthony.aragon@denvergov.org. So just so that we don't want Anthony to miss your email. So I think
Catherine, Joshua just added a question in the chat.
Oh, okay. Oh, hi, Joshua.
Mind answering that?
Any updates on the larger connections to the streets, like 51st Avenue Bridge? And its connection to the decisions around the National Western?
That would be a good question for either Beth or Karen, so maybe I'll defer to one of them.
Hey guys, it's Beth. Karen, did you have an update?
I was just going to say, I don't think we have an update right now. I think that's in the list of coming soon, but I don't think we have an update. And again, we will use this group to push information out, not just to you all, but as I mentioned before, getting you all to share the information with your networks as well. Beth, did I miss anything there?
No, I think that's fine. I think these things are just progressing along. So maybe when we circle back with you next month, for some of you who are on the CAG, we'll probably be able to give a more, state of where things are, a report.
Yeah, and anything that we share with you, we also, again, are wanting to share with that larger community. And we'll also be working with the council office to get it in council newsletter and other communications.
We're trying to get this information out to as many individuals as possible. So if you have any suggestions, as Gail did earlier, to help us do that, please don't hesitate to let Anthony know.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? I think, Anthony, we've reached the end of our meeting. Do you want to add anything in?
No, again, just thank everyone. I want to just personally thank everyone for giving up their time this evening. Again, if you have neighbors who do not have access and don't use the internet, because not everyone does, please have them email me and I will gladly walk them through the survey on the phone. So that way their input is captured. So again, anthony.aragon@denvergov.org. But I'm glad to get on the phone with anyone and ask them the questions and capture their information and make sure that we include their input as well.
Anthony, I think a phone number would be easier for folks who don't have the internet.
I'm sorry?
I think a phone number would be easier for folks who don't use the internet regularly.
Oh, sure. So I'll give you my cell phone. That's what I use. It's 720-252-0274. And I will include that in the chat as well. Please.
Will you just repeat it one more time, Anthony?
Certainly, 720-252-0274. And I just added it to the chat. And Angela, I believe you were going to say something and I interrupted you. My apologies.
Yes, I'm glad you know my voice. And I've been quiet today. So I just wanted to throw in there, we have had an increase of people who have wheelchairs in this neighborhood. And have you taken that into consideration, their needs?
Karen, on the sidewalk piece.
Karen, you're on mute.
Yep, I figured it out. Thanks. Yes, all of our sidewalk, that's again why, if the question is related to the sidewalk work, that's again why we can't just sort of lay them out. We have to design them and make sure we have curb ramps and have everything in place so that we're not creating something that looks like it's usable, but you can't access it. So that's something, the ADA accessibility is something that we are absolutely positively taking into account with the sidewalk design and placement. And great question, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Angela. All right, any other last comments or questions? So we'll see you again in April. Oh, I'm sorry, another one? Did I cut somebody off? No.
Oh, I was just going to thank, this is Katie. I was just going to thank Anthony for the phone number and ask if you can also put that on the materials that are going out too.
Great idea. Thanks, Katie.
And it doesn't have to be your cell phone, just any phone number. But thank you.
We're a close-knit group, so please, you have my cell phone. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me at any time if I can be of assistance.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to wish all of you a good evening and thank you for participating. We're going to reach out to you again in April. Please take a moment if you have it available to fill out the surveys. It's very, very helpful to us and will inform us as we move forward on the plans and designs. So thank you to all the presenters and thank you to all of you. And I hope you stay warm and stay healthy.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Catherine. Bye,
Good
Anthony.
night.
Bye, Angela.
Good night.